Welcome back, guys. We are doing another MCU video. It's been a while. I cannot wait to get started because Loki dropped. In case you missed it, I ended up staying up until 3 a.m. my time to watch it on the East Coast, and it was everything I expected and then some. Before we get into it, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button if you like this video, and drop a comment. But let's get into it. It's called Glorious Purpose for a reason. Man, this Loki pilot episode was so good. Let's just talk right off the bat. Tom Hiddleston does an incredible job, but we knew that. Owen Wilson, I gotta give him so much credit as the agent Mobius. Here's the thing. Owen Wilson takes a little bit of every character he plays and puts himself into that role, which I absolutely love, and I think that's why he's one of the more underrated actors in the industry. I know people are very high on him, but I still think he's underrated. So with that being said, I gotta say, he did an incredible job. Loki, obviously played by Tom Hiddleston, did an incredible job, and this pilot just hits home. First off, you get a scene, you go back to 2012, but not entirely. It's actually the Endgame scene that you see when the Avengers are going back in time to the 2012 Escape from New York, whatever you want to call it, era. And that is how Loki, of course, in the movie, which you were probably thinking is a giant plot hole, but you were also probably thinking, well, the MCU is known for, not just covering up plot holes, but making them part of the story, so you knew there's going to be something there. Well, yes, Loki grabs the Tesseract, and then he gets transported to God knows where, somewhere in the desert. And he actually runs into the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and basically, right off the bat, that plot hole gets closed up pretty quickly because the Time Variance Authority are going to bring him in. They seize him to have him pay for his crimes against the timeline. We know Loki is supposed to be brought back to Asgard according to the actual timeline that we've already seen, and face justice there. But since this happens, a variant Loki, as they call him, since he goes to a different timeline and kind of breaks off and does something that's not supposed to happen, him getting the Tesseract, for instance, well, that changes everything, and so that can't happen, and so that's why the TVA is after him. This is not the Loki from Endgame. I can't stress that enough. Or not Endgame, but this is not the Loki from Infinity War. When Loki dies, he gets killed by Thanos. This is not that same Loki character. He is different. He is essentially the Loki when he took the Tesseract, so he's still bad, and, by definition. So it's not the same guy. Keep that in mind. This episode, I thought, did a great job explaining the timeline. We are going into maybe the biggest, I think it's the biggest era of the MCU that we have ever seen. We're going into the multiverse. Whether people are ready for it or not, Spider-Man is going to introduce it in the third movie. Now, we know the multiverse of madness is going to happen, but what I don't think we realized until we watched this Loki, and of course, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen this already, please do not watch any further. I don't want to ruin it for you. I assumed anybody that clicked on this had already seen it, but just throwing that out there. So, very interestingly enough, we get it explained in this episode that the multiverse isn't a good thing. It's actually not something that is supposed to exist. It's something that gets broken into the multiverse. There's supposed to be what is considered the sacred timeline, the timeline that timekeepers, the powerful beings that control time, want it to be. So, in a way, the timekeepers aren't necessarily good, and they're not necessarily bad, but they are biased towards however they want the timeline to be. And we find that out, not long after. But the sacred timeline is essentially their go-to. Everything is supposed to be the way it is, all of that. And, Loki ends up getting brought to the TVA, and he's like, basically, why am I in trouble taking the Tesseract when the Avengers are the ones that literally time traveled? And then they answer and say, well, the Avengers were supposed to. That's part of the sacred timeline. So it kind of goes to show you these guys are a little biased. The Timekeepers, we didn't get to see them in this episode. I'm sure we'll see them at some point. But they are definitely biased. They have their own motives. We don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if the TVA is bad. They don't seem like great people, to be honest with you. And on top of that, Mobius honestly seems like the guy who's kind of rebelling against them. He might end up fighting against them. We'll see. We will see as this progresses. But Loki was standing trial, and they were basically about to reset him. I don't know if that means kill. They didn't really specify, although they kind of hinted that was kind of the way. But Mobius steps in, the agent for the Time Variance Authority, and he saves Loki, basically says we need Loki. Loki can help us track down all of these, variant Lokis in different timelines. And I thought that was very interesting. Obviously, we knew that was going to happen, but, we see Loki variants tormenting 1549 France, which shout out to, I don't know if this was on purpose. I would imagine it was, but shout out to the creators of Loki putting in a little nod, a little, jab there to the Mephisto diehard fans, because it's Loki as the devil who wears horns. But everybody, of course, was going to freak out when they saw that mural, the red demon or whatever, the red devil, because people were going to be like, oh, it's Mephisto. So hats off to you guys. That was awesome. And then, of course, 1858, Oklahoma. And I'm not sure why the MCU decided to even visit these places, but I can tell you I am sure that they will eventually let us know why. I think there's going to be a good explanation down the road, 100%. Now, we got to see Loki come across the TVA tutorial on his way to his hearing. And the tutorial video is very interesting because it acted like a tutorial video for the viewers out there, including myself and you, of course. Now, what I say by that is it basically explains in simple terms using graphics, which also help a lot. Timekeepers preserved a sacred timeline, but it sounds, really like, you're at the mercy of the Timekeepers in a sense. And the way they describe this, which I like, is it's not like, oh yeah, Loki took the Tesseract and it broke that timeline. It's like if you don't go to work when you're supposed to go to work, anybody that goes off the beaten path and disrupts the timeline, what can end up happening is creating the multiverse, which blew my mind because I already thought the multiverse exists. I thought that they were kind of teasing that in Far From Home, but sure enough, it doesn't exist right now. We know it's going to. So at the end of Loki, in some facet, the multiverse is going to arise. And so I found that very interesting that the multiverse does not exist. They don't want it to exist. They want to keep everything, the time flowing, very evenly, everything good by, of course, the Timekeeper standards. Which again begs the question, are they good? Are they bad? I don't really know. And I don't think you know. So with that being said, you have all sorts of things that pop up in this, little nods. You have the scream, the gutting you like a fish. If you caught that was from one of the Scream movies. It's a line that was used. DB Cooper, who is a real life folklore man who actually, he's real. The media just called him DB Cooper. We don't actually know what his name was, but essentially he's a guy who hijacked Boeing 727, jumped out with a parachute, and $200,000 ransom money. And it ended up being, the way they tied this in, ended up being a variant Loki who lost a bet to Thor, and he actually jumps out, and the way they kind of say that, because they never found this guy in real life, the way they say that they didn't find him in this is that he uses the Bifrost, Heimdall brings him up, and then he's gone, and just like that, he vanished, just like in real life. Obviously, that's not what happened, because Loki's not real, but I like that they did a little bit of a twist on reality there. The 2099 shout out to Spider-Man 2099, thought it was cool. If you guys didn't see, it was on his file. I forget the first date, but the second date that came after that was 2099. That was a nod to Spider-Man. I don't know if they'll go, down that road. I'm sure they will at some point, but I don't think we're there at this moment. Honestly, I'm willing to bet we're not there at this moment. So with that being said, my thoughts on the episode, fun. Basically, everyone is a jerk except, I mean, you could see Loki as a heart. I think my favorite part of this episode is when he's rewatching. And when I say rewatching, he hasn't even lived this yet, but he's watching the previous Loki that we, grew to love. Even if he was a villain, we grew to love him. He's watching the previous Loki, all the things that he went through, losing his mother, how it's supposed to happen in the timeline, him turning good, helping, during the Ragnarok movie, and then the beginning of Infinity War. So he gets to see himself before he even turns good, so to speak. He sees himself do that, which I found very interesting, creates an interesting dynamic. We already had from Taika Waititi and, of course, Tom Hiddleston. They've both denied that Loki will be in Thor 4. I wouldn't rule it out. Here's the thing. Marvel, if you don't know, all they do is deny, and then it happens. That's their way. If you've been living under a rock, just because they said Loki, isn't going to be in it, that doesn't debunk anything, and you shouldn't feel like it does, because the only one that really isn't good at it is Sony. What they'll do is they'll release it, and then when they release stuff or they leak it by accident and then a bunch of people post it, instead of playing dumb and acting like it, was supposed to be out, they try to take everything down. They copyright strike people on YouTube, and there you go. So again, Marvel is really good at just deny, and Sony's not. So that's that on that. But all in all, again, I thought it was a really good pilot episode. I liked that moment with Loki. I really liked the addition of Mobius in the MCU. I think Owen Wilson is just phenomenal in this. I can already tell it's going to be a great series. Has the potential to be the best, has the potential to be better than WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier put together, because this has a serious budget. They are treating this like a cinematic film, just like the others. And to me, coming out of the bat, right out of the gates, almost an hour-long first, pilot episode, it's a lot better than the way WandaVision started off, and a lot of those episodes were really short. This is going to at least allow you to get your fill of the week. As they said, Wednesday is the new Friday. So we're going to get our fill of the week. We're not going to feel like it's too short. I felt like it was a good time, good pacing. Nothing was thrown together. I didn't feel like it was forced, and I think that's the really good thing. So all in all, I got to give this a 9.5 out of 10 for this episode. Love this episode. And I love Loki. I think he's an incredible character. He's played by an incredible actor, and they really know what they're doing. I'm going to let them do it, not complain whatsoever. I like the subtle nods to certain things in the MCU. I think they really set up a huge number of projects down the line. And my last thought is Secret Wars. If you weren't ready before, it is 100% going to happen at some point in the MCU. To me, this confirms it. We will see, but that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if this video offered anything to your day, added any value, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button and drop a comment. Let's discuss. Really hyped about Loki and can't wait to talk about next week when we get episode 2. You guys take care, and I'll see you guys soon.